This happened a few months ago. I was driving home from a meeting late at night. I often took a deserted stretch of highway to avoid the traffic in the city. The quiet felt nice after long days filled with deadlines. Little did I know how that quiet would soon turn creepy. It was about 1 a.m. when I first noticed something. I was half listening to the radio, and then I saw a flicker in my rearview mirror. I thought maybe it was headlights. I glanced back, but there was nothing. Just darkness behind me. I shrugged it off, figuring my tired eyes had played tricks. The next night, I drove that way again. It felt quieter than usual, and unease settled in my stomach. I focused on the road, but then that flicker happened again. It was like a shadow dancing behind me. I shook my head, telling myself it was all in my mind. That's when the whispers started. Soft sounds drifting through the trees. They made me uneasy, and I didn't want to stop. What was out there? I kept driving, heart racing. I kept telling myself I was being silly. A few nights later, I swerved to miss something on the side of the road. I could have sworn it was a figure standing there. I felt a cold chill run down my back. I glanced back, but there was nothing. Just empty highway. It was like night itself stared at me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The tension kept building. I dreaded those late-night drives. My nerves were frayed. Every time I turned on the headlights, I'd feel a wave of dread. I began questioning my sanity. Were the whispers real? Or was it just stress? Then, it got worse. I drove that route again. The same light appeared. This time, it shone bright and made my heart pound. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I tried to tell myself I was fine, but I was anything but fine. Then I heard it. A voice, clearer than before, calling my name. Panic seized me. I felt sweat dripping down my neck. The voice faded into silence, and all I could hear was the thrum of my heartbeat. What did it want? I turned around to look. Nothing. Just more darkness. I felt sick as I realized I hadn't imagined any of this. I wanted to just get home. I was terrified, but I had to keep moving. After that night, it got harder to drive home. Every time I took that stretch, I felt that light. Those whispers echoed in my mind. Was I going crazy? Someone must have known my name. I thought about stopping, but the loneliness of the road held me back. That I still drive home, but I always look over my shoulder. I dread the night and the shadows. I can't help but wonder what truly lurks in the darkness. Even now, it haunts me. What is out there? I don't know if I'll ever find out. I had to take that highway again. I didn't want to, but I had to. I needed to get home after a long day at work. The office was dark and empty. It felt like I was being drawn back into the quiet terror of those late-night drives. As I pulled onto the highway, my heart raced. The headlights cut through the darkness like a knife, but that only made the shadows seem deeper. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Tonight would be different. I just needed to remind myself it was all in my head, but it wasn't. I was about halfway home when I saw it. The flicker returned, but this time it was more vivid, more defined. A wash of cold dread settled in my stomach. I forced myself to keep driving, gripping the steering wheel harder. The whispers drifted through the trees again, and I felt the air thicken around me. I turned up the radio, searching for any distraction. Nothing calmed me. I could hardly focus on the music. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it again. A figure standing on the side of the road, just beyond the reach of my headlights. I didn't even slow down. I drove faster, my breath quickening. I was terrified of looking back, but I needed to. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The figure was gone. I cursed under my breath, but relief washed over me. Maybe I was finally imagining things. As I neared the exit for my street, I thought I could see something ahead, sitting in the middle of the road. I slowed down, squinting. It looked like a car, abandoned and stopped. Its headlights were off. A feeling of foreboding hit me. My heart sank when I recognized the make. It was the same model as mine that I felt a surge of panic. I didn't stop. I swerved onto the gravel shoulder and sped past. But then I heard it. A voice in my head. Stop. You need to help. I shook it off, trying to dismiss it as just fear. But something pulled at me, and the voice was persistent. I didn't want to help. I didn't want to end up like that figure in the trees or face whatever was waiting in the dark. Finally, I turned onto my street. Relief washed over me as I neared my driveway. But then, just as I slowed down, a cold fear gripped my chest. The flicker was back. I saw the bright light in the rearview mirror, and my name echoed in the night once more. I turned to look back, my heart pounding. This time, I wasn't alone. Someone was right behind me, closer than I had imagined. I slammed on my brakes and spun the wheel to the side of the road. I jumped out, my breath coming fast. That's when I saw it. A shadow, moving in the darkness. The whispers grew louder, more demanding. I felt a chill creep over me as it drew closer, and I realized I was not just facing another paranoia. Something was here, and it was ready to confront me. The shadow loomed just beyond the glow of my car's headlights. My heart raced as I stood frozen, staring into the dark. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze, heavy and unyielding. Every instinct in me screamed to run, yet I was rooted to the spot. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice shaky. I expected silence, but instead, the whispers intensified. They echoed all around me, swirling like a storm. I strained to catch a word, a name, but it was nothing I recognized. Then, the shadow stepped forward, and I stumbled back. It was more defined now, its edges sharper as if pulling in the light. I took a deep breath, redirecting all my fear into anger. "Get away from me." But it didn't respond. It just stood there, still as a statue. The longer I looked, the more I realized it wasn't just an outline of a person. It felt unreal, like a nightmare woven into the fabric of my reality. Adrenaline coursed through my veins. I turned back to the car, every hair on my body standing on end. The thoughts raced, should I get inside? What if I couldn't start the engine? What if there was something waiting for me in there? The faint glow of my dashboard lights barely illuminated the interior, but in that brief flicker, I saw it. My phone was still lying on the passenger seat. Instantly, a plan formed in my mind. I didn't want to look away from the shadow, but I couldn't leave without my phone. I stepped backward cautiously, keeping my eyes fixed on it. Every inch felt like a mile. I reached for the car door, praying that it wouldn't creak. It didn't. I sucked in a breath and slid inside, never breaking my gaze with the shadow outside. As I grabbed my phone, my fingers trembled. I knew I could call for help. But what would I say? "Hello, there's a ghost in my driveway." This wasn't an ordinary situation. My heart thudded louder in my chest as I finally picked up the phone and held it tightly, but when I turned back, the shadow was closer. No longer in the distance, it was almost touching the edge of the headlights. Panic washed over me again. I needed to get out of there, but the thought of driving away while it was so near made my stomach twist that I forced myself to breathe. I had to act. I started the engine, the sound roaring to life and drowning out the whispers. I gripped the steering wheel, and just as I was about to throw the car into gear, the shadow reached out a hand that I gasped. The moment felt frozen. It was so close now, closer than the fear I had harbored. I couldn't understand what was happening. Was it going to hurt me? Would it just want to talk? But as I stared into the dark space of its face, a chilling thought settled in. I hadn't just seen that shadow outside my car. I had seen it on the highway numerous times before. It had followed me home. meaning it knew me, and then everything went dark. The car lights flickered and cut out, leaving me in complete blackness. I blinked, trying to will the light back. I patted my phone, still cradled in my palm. My thumb instinctively pressed the screen, but nothing happened. I was alone in a heavy silence, and the oppressive dark felt suffocating. That I heard the whispers again, this time very close. They were no longer an echo but a clear murmur, as if someone stood just outside my window, sharing secrets I wasn't meant to hear. My heart pounded, the familiar rhythm morphing into a frantic race as I gripped the steering wheel. Then, without warning, a soft tap echoed against the passenger window. I flinched, my breath hitching. It was a dull noise, as if the shadow had extended something toward me. I glanced back, half expecting to see a face inches away from mine. Instead, I saw nothing. Just the silhouette of the shadow. I could feel its presence, pressing in, waiting, but I couldn't see it clearly. "What do you want?" I spat out, my voice shaking despite the anger behind it. The whispers intensified, almost drowning out my thoughts. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block my fear. When I opened them again, I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. I turned. The shadow wasn't just outside anymore. It was shifting. That I remembered the highway those late nights when I drove home, always catching a glimpse of the same silhouette. I had thought it mere fatigue, a trick of the light. Now that I was awake and terrified, it felt absurd to think it could be anything less than a warning. Suddenly, the passenger door handle jiggled. I gasped and instinctively locked the doors. I glanced to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the shadow sliding in behind me. Nothing. Just an empty road, but I felt something pulling at me, drawing nearer. That I needed to get away. I turned the ignition again, praying for a miracle. The engine sputtered for a moment before roaring to life and filling the interior with a dim, muffled sound. I threw the car into reverse and backed up, my foot pressing hard on the accelerator. Just as I turned to speed away, a flash of light illuminated the scene outside, casting a haunting outline of the shadow against the trees. Instinctively, I slammed on the brakes. The vehicle skidded to a halt, and when the headlights settled back into the dark, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A reflection. Not of the shadow, but a pair of eyes staring back at me. They glowed in the dark like two tiny stars, fixated on me. I was frozen in place, a fresh wave of fear washing over me. The whispers softened, almost calming, as if the shadow wanted to interact. What was it trying to say? Those eyes were familiar, almost comforting, but I couldn't shake the dread curling in my gut. And then, just as quickly as they had appeared, the eyes vanished into the night. My fingers trembled against the wheel. Had they belonged to someone I knew? I had to get out of there. I shifted into gear and sped down the road, the engine's roar drowning out whatever whispers lingered in the wind. But the more I drove, the clearer it became. I wasn't going to escape that easily. I glanced in the mirror again. The shadow lingered in the distance, trailing behind me like an unshakable nightmare. When I realized I was being followed. I pressed the gas pedal harder, desperate to put as much distance between me and the shadow as I could. The trees blurred past, dark shapes that seemed to loom closer as I drove faster. But it was right there, still following, just behind the glow of my taillights. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was gaining on me. Fear clawed at my throat. I needed to think. Flashes of headlights from oncoming cars jolted me to the realization that I was on a two-lane road, almost deserted at this hour. I glanced at the dashboard. 12:02 a.m. Where had the time gone? I should have been home long ago. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, startling me. A static-filled voice came through, muddled but distinct. "Help can't escape shadow." I frowned, my heartbeat quickening. Was someone else experiencing this? Or was it just another trick of my panicked mind? The words slurred together, creating a sense of urgency that sent shivers down my spine. I turned it off, searching for comfort in silence. When I saw it again, the shadow, now closer than ever. It loomed behind my car, stretching like a dark smoke, and the whispers returned, louder this time. They formed words I couldn't quite understand but felt sinister nonetheless. A chill snaked through my body, and I racked my brain for an idea, anything to escape this nightmare. A turn-off sign appeared on the side of the road. My eyes flicked toward it. Maybe a side road would lead me away, confuse whatever that was trailing me. I jerked the wheel, making a hard turn. The tires screeched, and I veered onto the gravel path. For a moment, I felt victorious, the thrill of evasion rushing through me. But then my headlights caught something ahead, another car, parked and dark. A feeling of dread washed over me as I slowed. Why was it here, abandoned and silent? My heart raced. I strained to see inside, but the shadows concealed everything. I pulled closer, curiosity battling the fear. Part of me wanted to get out and check for help. The other part warned me against it. Just then, a sudden gust of wind hit the car, rattling it. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The shadow was right behind me now, towering over the abandoned vehicle, its dark form swallowing everything around it. I couldn't breathe. I fumbled for my phone, the weight of its darkness pressing down on me. Then everything went dark. The headlights flickered out completely, plunging me into blackness. That I squeezed the wheel, panic flooding my mind. I was trapped. The sound of shuffling drew my attention. In the darkness outside, a figure stepped forward, something barely human, shrouded in shadow. When I heard a voice, clear and cold, "You shouldn't have looked back." I held my breath, the voice echoing in my ears. Was I dreaming? Or had fear twisted reality into something grotesque? The figure loomed closer, patches of shadow swirling around it, obscuring any details. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Get away from me!" I shouted, my voice breaking. But it only laughed, a hollow sound that curdled my blood. In the pitch dark, a glimmer of panic ignited. I needed to move. I fumbled to twist the ignition key, but despite my frantic efforts, nothing happened. The engine sat silent. I was trapped, locked in this car with whatever was outside. My heart raced. Was it really a figure? Or just a trick of the shadow? But the pulse of this thing felt too real, too menacing. It extended a hand, long and twisted, dissolving into darkness. I pressed against my seat, wide-eyed. Then the shuffling echoed again, but this time, it wasn't just the figure. I heard something else, crawling along the gravel. A sound like nails dragging. My stomach churned, fear threatening to boil over. I glanced around, looking for any way out, but the black outside was closing in as though it wanted to suffocate me. Suddenly, the figure stepped into the limited beams of my headlights. I gasped. It looked like a person, but the face was melted away, replaced with a void of swirling darkness. No eyes, no mouth, just an endless black that seemed to gaze right through me. "Turn around," it said, its voice a whisper that slithered into my mind. "You shouldn't have turned off the road." My eyes darted to the rearview mirror. The shadow was different now, more massive. It stretched and contorted like a mass of smoke, pulsing as it approached. I felt its weight pressing against my chest, suffocating me. With sheer desperation, I reached for my phone again. I had to try and call for help. The screen glowed dimly, illuminating the darkness inside the car. But there was no signal. Just a swirling void of red, no service. My heart sank. I looked back at the creature, frozen in fear. "What do you want from me?" The words tumbled out despite my shaking lips. The entity took a step forward, and a chill swept through the air. "Nothing. Just be still." Suddenly, the car shook, sending tremors through the metal frame. I felt a wave of energy, as if the darkness itself was alive and attempting to squeeze its way into the vehicle. My instincts kicked in. I couldn't just sit here. I threw the door open, the night air rushing in. It felt colder than before, sharper. I jumped out, heart in my throat, and let instinct guide me into the surrounding trees. But before I could take another step, I stumbled and fell, knees hitting the ground hard. When I looked back, The car was just a dim outline now, shrouded in shadows, and the figure was there, watching me with that endless void for a face. Whatever it wasn't he backing down. The forest swallowed my terrified screams as the shadow began to loom closer. Instinct told me to run, yet dread froze my feet to the spot. As the figure stepped forward again, I realized, this had only just begun. I pushed myself up, hands trembling as I wiped the dirt from my knees. The darkness felt alive, the trees towering above like silent sentinels. I turned to run deeper into the forest, but every instinct screamed at me to stay put and hide. I couldn't let that thing catch me. As I stumbled over a knotted root, I heard a soft rustling nearby. Panic gripped me tighter as I paused, waiting for my eyes to adjust. But nothing moved. It was as if the whole world held its breath. I strained to hear something beyond my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. Just silence that I took another step but felt the ground shift beneath me. The earth was uneven, wet. I looked down and realized I was on the edge of a small creek. Its dark water rippled in the moonlight. I hesitated for a moment. Water could hide my footsteps. Before I could decide, I heard it again, a faint shuffling, stronger this time. It was closer. My blood ran cold. I had to get away. I dashed across the creek, feeling the cold water splash against my ankles, but there was no sense of relief. My mind raced. Was it following me? I pushed through the brush, branches scratching at my arms, but I barely felt it. I needed to keep moving. I was on autopilot, fleeing whatever shadow lurked behind me. Suddenly, I broke through the trees and found myself in a clearing. I stopped, panting, scanning my surroundings. Barely 20 feet away, there stood an old cabin, its windows dark and empty. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could find help inside. Or at least something to defend myself. That I hurried toward the cabin, trepidation gnawing at my gut. The door hung slightly ajar as if waiting for me. Should I go in? I hesitated, glancing back. The shadows in the trees were darker than before. I had no choice that I pushed the door open. It creaked on rusty hinges, the sound echoing in the quiet like a warning. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and despair. I quickly surveyed the room, an old table, a few chairs, cobwebs in the corners. There was no sign of life, but my gut told me I wasn't completely alone. That I stepped further inside and noticed a small cabinet against the far wall. My heart raced. I needed something, anything to protect myself. But as I reached for the handle, I caught a glimpse of a shadow flickering in the corner of my eye. Then, I heard a whisper. You shouldn't have come here. It wasn't in my head. It was real, close, and it paralyzed me. I whipped around, and in the dim light, I could make out something shifting even darker than the night itself. My breath hitched, and in that moment, I realized it wasn't just me being hunted. The chase had taken a new turn. And I had wandered right into its lair. I was frozen, heart racing, when the shadow moved again. It twisted and curled, almost alive, as if it were deciding whether to reveal itself or not. My instincts kicked in, and I tucked myself behind the cabinet, pressing my back against the cold wood. I held my breath. The whisper echoed in my mind, you shouldn't have come here. What did that even mean? Why was this happening? I strained to hear anything beyond the pounding in my ears. My hands shook as I peered around the cabinet's edge, eyes locked on the space where the dark figure had hovered. Then I noticed something. The wall next to the shadow was covered with old newspaper clippings. I squinted, hoping to catch a glimpse of the headlines. My curiosity distracted me from my fear. What stories could possibly be lurking in this desolate cabin? Just then, I heard footsteps outside the cabin. They were slow and deliberate. I couldn't make out any voices, but the unmistakable sound of something being dragged made my stomach drop. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I fought the urge to scream. Was it the same thing that had chased me? Or something worse. I needed to figure out a way out of here, but the only escape seemed to be right in front of that shadow. I decided to risk a look again. I slowly leaned forward, breath held, and dared to peek out from behind the cabinet. The shadow was gone. I blinked. The air felt oppressive, charged with a sense of dread. The footsteps outside had stopped. There was only silence now, thick enough to choke on. Then, all at once, the door swung open with a loud bang. I gasped, scrambling behind the cabinet, heart racing wildly. A figure stepped inside, cloaked in darkness, the light from outside casting an unsettling silhouette. I could barely make out the shape, tall, thin, and impossibly still. "Is anyone there?" The voice was low, gravelly. It sent chills down my spine. I pressed my hands over my mouth, trying to muffle my breathing. If they came in here, there would be no escape. I heard more rustling outside, the sound of branches snapping underfoot. "Come out. I know you're in here." The figure took a step closer. A flicker of movement caught my eye, something shifting against the wall near the newspaper clippings. I needed to know what it was. My mind raced. Was I ready to risk everything for the truth? Just as I was about to lean in again, the figure turned and shouted, "You can't hide from me." My heart nearly stopped. And then the lights flickered off. Darkness enveloped the room. I knew I had to move, but where? I felt around for the cabinet door, praying it would push open into safety. Just as I stepped out, I caught that whisper again, muffled in the blackness, "You shouldn't have come here." That's when I saw it, a glint of metal reflecting the slight moonlight, lying on the floor. I rushed towards it, knowing full well that whatever was hunting me was not merely searching for me in the dark. It was waiting for me to stumble into its trap. I lunged towards the glint, my heart racing. My fingers closed around the cold metal, and I pulled it up. It was a blade, small but sharp, its edge gleaming in the dim light. My breath hitched. I had no idea whose it was or what it had been used for. But in that moment, I felt a surge of courage. I could defend myself if I had to. Then everything shifted again. A subtle sound caught my attention, a scratching noise coming from the far wall. My nerves prickled as I turned toward it, gripping the blade tighter. The whispers were growing louder now, overlapping, incoherent. They were angry, desperate, and full of warning. "Get out," one voice hissed. "It shouldn't have found you." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of unseen eyes on me. The air turned colder, and I shivered. I didn't know how much time I had. The figure was still in the cabin, and my instincts urged me to find a way out. After fumbling in the darkness, I found what I hoped was a window. I crept toward it, dread pooling in my stomach. Just as I reached it, the door slammed hard against the wall. "Where are you?" The figure's voice echoed, deeper now, almost melodic in the dark. I pressed my body against the window frame, trying to remain still. A sliver of moonlight spilled through the cracks, but it didn't illuminate the figure's face. It loomed instead, deep shadows enveloping it like a cloak. Was it truly searching for me, or was it just playing with its prey? Then, I heard a low growl, a vibration that resonated within my rib cage. I glanced back at the clippings on the wall, desperate for anything that might hint at the figure's intentions. The words blurred together, but one headline stood out, "Disappearance at Black Hollow Cabin." My heart dropped. Why was I here? I hadn't wanted to uncover anything dark. I was just looking for answers. Was I just another name for that cursed list? "Are you looking for the truth?" The figure taunted, stepping forward into the faint light. Its face remained hidden, but I could feel its gaze boring into me, measuring fear. "Because it's right here." A sudden crash from outside caught both of our attentions. The noise was loud, followed by the unmistakable sounds of shouting. It was coming from the direction I'd arrived from. A chill shot through me. Did someone else notice I was missing? "Stay," it commanded, voice thick with menace. My body went tense. I had no choice. I was trapped. I tightened my grip on the blade, heart pounding against my chest. The figure took another step closer, and the whispers crescendoed to a desperate plea. Just then, there was a break. A figure emerged at the door. The light from outside silhouetted their shape. I blinked hard, trying to focus. Who was it? Friend or foe? Run! The figure shouted, and just like that, the darkness around me split open. That I didn't wait for confirmation. I bolted towards the nearest exit, but the cloaked figure lunged, blocking my path. I hesitated, fear coiling in my stomach. In that fleeting moment, I had a choice. I could face the darkness, or I could try to escape back into the light. Knowing the truth might just be the most dangerous thing of all. I sprinted toward the door, heart pounding in my chest, ready to embrace the light that beckoned from beyond. I felt the shadow's presence shift behind me, an undeniable weight that gnawed at my resolve. As I reached the threshold, the figure raised its hand, and time slowed to a crawl. I could feel every heartbeat in my ears, every ounce of fear threatening to consume me, but I pressed forward, bursting through the door and into the outside world. Bright moonlight enveloped me, and the air was sharp and cold against my skin. I glanced behind, daring to hope, but the figure was gone, swallowed by the shadows of the cabin. I barely registered that someone had come to help. I was still trapped in my own nightmare, running with the echoes of whispers still swirling in my mind. Are you okay? The voice was urgent yet familiar, carrying a sense of urgency. I turned, breathless, and saw a friend from work, Tom, standing there, eyes wide with concern. Relief flooded through me, mixing with disbelief. What are you doing here? I came looking for you when I didn't hear from you, he replied, scanning the darkness. I pulled into the clearing and saw your car. I thought you might have had trouble. I wanted to explain everything, how the shadow had haunted me, how the whispers had wrapped around me like a noose, and how fear had driven me to this abandoned cabin. But when I opened my mouth to speak, all that came out was a shaky breath. Let us get out of here, Tom urged, stepping toward me. I nodded, my instincts urging me to move fast. The night still hummed with tension, the woods breathing around us. As we hurried down the narrow path, the air felt charged, heavy with something unnameable. I felt the shadow looming behind me, but I couldn't turn around, not now. Whatever it was seemed to tighten its grip, a presence thrumming just out of sight. Each step away from that cabin felt like breaking free from a spell, but as we approached my car, a sudden wave of uncertainty crashed over me. What if it's still there? I whispered. Tom shot me a questioning look, but I hesitated. I wanted to feel safe, to believe I could leave it all behind, but the dread clawed at me. Nothing else here, he said firmly, but I could sense the uncertainty beneath his facade. I opened the passenger door, half expecting the shadow to lunge out, unseen but somehow more potent now. Tom followed, glancing nervously around as he slid into the driver's seat. Let us just get home, I urged, my voice unsteady. That he turned the key in the ignition, but the engine sputtered, lifeless and silent. What the? His brows knitted in frustration. My pulse quickened as I felt the familiar chill creep up my spine. It was here, waiting in the pockets of the shadows, relishing in the moments of fear. Start again, I said, forcing confidence into my tone. The rush of adrenaline was unbearable as I glanced at the rearview mirror. Shadows danced there as if they held secrets too dark to utter. Tom tried again, but still nothing. In that moment, I knew the truth danced just beyond my reach. Here we were, trapped. I had wanted answers, but what if the truth was simply more shadows? The whispers swelled, beckoning me to listen, telling me there was more I had yet to uncover. Come on, please, I whispered, urging the vehicle to respond. Anxiety twisted within me. What if the entity was inside? Did it know I had shared my fear with someone else? My grip tightened on the handle as Tom turned to me. Look, we need to get out into the open, he said, and the urgency in his voice snapped me from my thoughts. I nodded, determined to push forward. It felt ridiculous, but what choice did we have? Tom gestured to the option of exiting the car, and once more, I felt that pull. Shadows, whispers, a haunting presence. With my heart in my throat, poised between lingering dread and frail hope, we stepped into the night again. But no longer was I alone. I could not deny the shadow weaving unseen threads around us as we moved, lingering at the edges, swirling with secret intentions. We walked back down the road, the moonlight glinting off the leaves, and now I knew we were being watched. I could hear the whispers intertwining with the rustle of leaves. Some questions would remain unanswered, some truths obscured by the uncertainty of what lay in darkness. As we distanced ourselves from that cabin, the shadows persisted behind us but transformed from a harbinger of fear into a lingering question of what was real. And with every step, that unease intensified, reminding me that while I might escape, some encounters were not easily forgotten. That I didn't know what I faced that night or if I'd ever truly understand it. But as we walked toward the distant glow of civilization, the memory of that relentless shadow trailed like a haunting echo, lurking beneath the surface of my thoughts, waiting to re-emerge. I moved to a new city shortly after, still haunted by those eyes I had glimpsed in the dark. Sometimes I wonder if that shadow is still there, if it whispers to others navigating those same highways, perpetually awash in darkness. And mostly, I try not to think about it.